Today on StampTV, I'm going to show you an easy-to-create card project featuring the new Shabby Spring StampTV kit, along with some of our new vintage cuts frames, borders, and pieces. You can also use dies and punches to create a similar look, along with trimming around the images with scissors. Let me show you the tools and products you're going to need to make this project. First, you're going to need some ink, and I'm using some of the Gina Design's Fresh Asparagus and Tomato Soup ink. Then you're going to need some stamps, and I'm using some of the stamps from the new Shabby Spring StampTV kit. These are from the Spring Blessings StampTV stamp set, and there's also just a couple little stamps here and there that come from the Warm Spring Wishes stamp set, but both of those are in the Shabby Spring StampTV kit. Then you're going to need a Stamp-A-Majig. Now, for those of you that are really good at lining things up, especially with clear stamps, you won't need the Stamp-A-Majig. However, there's one stamp that I have a little bit of trouble lining up, so I'm going to use my Stamp-A-Majig for that, and you might want to too. Then you're going to need some adhesive and some pop dots. You're also going to need some scissors. And then for cardstock and pattern paper, I am using some of the Shabby Spring 6x6 pattern paper pack, along with some fresh asparagus cardstock. Then I'm also going to use some of the Gina Design's white cardstock, and this is the heavy base weight cardstock. This is going to be my card base. And then for vintage cut pieces, I'm going to use the bird piece. I'm going to use a flower, a larger flower. I'm going to use a large vine of leaves and a small vine of leaves. And then I also am going to use one of the ovals. Now, this oval matches this particular oval, and this is also one of our vintage cuts. This is one of the fancy ovals, and you can see how pretty that is. Now, along with this fancy oval piece, I'm going to use one of these fancy borders to go with it. So these come all pre-packaged and ready to use on your card, so these are very convenient, and they come in a variety of colors right now, with more to come. And stay tuned for my video on Friday, because I'm going to show you the different colors and also a unique storage system designed especially for our vintage cuts. So let's get started on this card project. The first thing I want to do is stamp the border, and this is the oval border. I want to stamp that onto my oval, my ivory oval. Now, I am going to use the Stamp-A-Majig for this one, because this one, I really want it to be perfectly centered, and I do have a little bit of trouble getting it that way. So I'm going to start with a little bit of tape on the back, and then I'm just going to tape that down to my workstation, and that will make it not move around so that I can actually stamp this correctly. Then I'm going to grab the Stamp-A-Majig and line up the tool and the imaging sheet. And I'm going to ink up this oval using some of the fresh asparagus ink. Now I'm just going to create the imaging sheet part first. So now with that tucked nicely into that right angle, I'm going to slip my block in there and stamp. So now I have exactly where this stamp is in relation to the Stamp-A-Majig. So now I'm going to line that up onto my oval piece. And because there's two sides to this oval, you can see if your eye is a little bit better than mine. And you can try it first, and if it's not straight, just flip it over and use the other side. So now I'm going to reposition that sheet, and then ink up this oval again, holding my Stamp-A-Majig in place. And then I'm going to get that into that right angle and stamp. And because this is a big stamp, you do want to stamp all the way around the perimeter. You want to put a little bit of pressure on that. Okay, so now I have my oval. Now I'm going to take that and put that aside because my next step is to stamp one of these birds. I always pull a couple of them out just so that I have them in case. But you can see that you have to find the right side, so get that all ready and lined up. And then ink up that stamp. And I know it might sound like I'm really beating my stamp with my ink pad, but I have a directional microphone right here that's really picking up how the sound of the ink pad tapping against the stamp. I'm really not abusing my stamp. Okay, so I'm going to lean right over on top of it and stamp down onto that bird. So there is my bird image ready for my card. Now while I have the fresh asparagus out, I'm going to grab these leaves and I'm going to stamp these in fresh asparagus as well. And I just stored my stamps on this little clear block here. So I'll start with the small one. I'll grab that and put that onto the clear block. And then I'll just check and line that up. Yep, that looks good. So I'm going to ink that stamp up and stamp it onto that little vintage cut. There we go. I'm going to do the larger one now using this larger sprig of leaves. And this one goes in the opposite direction. I'm going to stamp this one. All right, so now I have these leaves and I'm going to put those aside. And my last bit of stamping is going to be done using some of this tomato soup. Now these flowers, you want to make sure when you're lining them up that you have them facing in the right direction and find the correct petals too. So that might take just a second to figure out, but once you've got it figured out, it'll look great. Although I have stamped them a little bit like going in the wrong direction and they look really cute because the flowers look a little wonky on the cutout and it's kind of a cute look too. All right, so we'll get that one onto that little piece. There we go. And then one more. I have this bigger flower here. And I'm going to stamp my bigger flower. There we go. They're pretty easy to line up. They match the same shape as the stamp fairly well, so you shouldn't have too much trouble. And there is my final flower. And so you can see how nice and bold that looks, especially with that ivory edge peeking out from behind it. So now it's time to assemble this card. And this card is so quick and easy to do, but it's so pretty. I just love it. So I'm going to grab that card base and score that at 5.5 inches. Now when you're using our heavy base weight cardstock, you do want to make sure that you score a couple of times. So I always do, you know, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4, and then fold it away from that ridge that you just created. You want to fold away from the indent, because what you've actually done is stretched the seams of the paper, the fibers of the cardstock a little bit, and so you want to then fold away in the same direction that you stretched it. Okay, so now I have my ivory card base, and you can see this is our 120-pound cardstock. No cracking at all on that card base. So now I'm going to grab this patterned paper piece, and I'm going to lay my border. This is one of the vintage borders. I want to lay this out so that it's even on both sides. See what I mean? I don't want to just start it right at the end and have 3 full ones and then 1 tiny little quarter one there, but I want to space it out nicely so that it will fit evenly and there's an even amount on both sides. Now we made these 5.5 inches. This way, if you want to put these down the front of an entire card front, they will fit on the entire card front. But you can trim them down to any size that you want. And later this month, I will be showing you what you can do with the little ends that you cut off, so don't throw those away. Okay, so now I'm going to tape, just grab a little bit of tape there onto that border and line it up so that it looks even on both sides. And that looks pretty good. There we go. And then you can press that down. And then just take a pair of scissors and trim off that excess right along the edge. Do that on the other side too. Now this little piece here I'll throw away. I'll throw this one away. But this one I'm going to keep. And I'm actually going to trim it right to that loop there. And then I'm going to save that and store that, because you could see how that would make such a nice little tab sticking out from something. There's so many uses for these. You can nest two of them together and make a full spiral circle that you can put a button in the center of. So I'll show you some ideas for that later. So this is a keeper. Now this whole panel is going to go on top of my fresh asparagus panel. So we'll do that now. There we go. And this whole panel is going to go on top of my card base. All right. There we go. So there's my card ready to get embellished. Now my next step is to grab that vintage cut fancy oval, and I'm going to apply that onto right on top of the fresh asparagus one. And there is a little tiny edge that goes around the perimeter, so you still have some fresh asparagus peeking out, which is so pretty. There we go. And now I'm going to start to embellish this. And I'm going to do that first by laying out my design. So I'm going to put my bird right up here. And then I'm going to put one sprig of leaves here and a flower. Then another sprig of leaves down here, coming out of there, and another flower. Now that leaves a little bit of room right there for me to stamp my greeting. And the greeting I'm going to use is the Miss You greeting. This would be a nice card to send to a student that's away at college, or a friend that's maybe overseas or moved to another state. Now here I have a little piece of cardstock that I'm just going to test it on to make sure that it's clean and stamping nice. There we go. Okay, so now leaving that all laid out, I'm going to ink that up and stamp that right in this spot right there. There we go. And now I can assemble this part of my card. So I'm going to do that using some pop dots. I'm going to use 3 for the bird, and you can use any brand of foam adhesive pop dot type of things that you have. You're not limited to what I use. I'm sure a lot of you have some dimensionals from different companies. And this is going to go right there. Then next, I'm going to add that particular sprig of leaves. And this one, I think 2 will do it. And if you do use the pop dots or anything like this, don't throw the sheet out once all the dots are gone. Cut the sheet. It's all the same stuff, so you can cut little squares and little pieces as you need them until the whole thing is gone. Don't waste it. All right, so this is going to go up here like that. Then I'm going to put one down here. Make sure that looks good. Yep. Okay, so one right about there. And again, 2 pop dots will work fine for this. And some of them actually won't be stuck to the frame, but they're actually going to be stuck to the card, so you could still put them on now. Okay, we'll do that one there. And then this flower, I'm going to put right there. I think one pop dot for this will work, just right in the center. We'll put that one there. And then we'll put one down here a little bit. Kind of like the feel of the two flowers and the one bird. That kind of gives you that three theory that a lot of people like to use, where things always look better in threes. So now I have that embellishment, and this whole embellishment is just going to go onto my card using some adhesive. So we'll get that lined up straight. There we go. And then you can press down, and any pieces that are extending, you can press down as well. And there, let's move that over a little bit. There is my finished card project. Our vintage cuts will be available on our website at ginakdesigns.com in the Vintage Cuts category tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central Time. And stay tuned for more exciting projects featuring the new Shabby Spring StampTV kit.